Igama lam ndinguNcebakazi Zathu, ndifunda ugrade 9, ndifunda eMkhantsini. Isikolo ndiyasithanda, isifundo endisithandayo yi-Maths nesiXhosa ne-English. Kumnandi ukufunda esikolweni. Xa ndigqiba ukufunda ndifuna uba yi-accountant. Neeklasi zethu ziyanetha. Xa ngaba kubanda siyagodola. Xa kushisa iyasishisa ezi klasi sifundela kuzo. Ngamanye amaxesha xa kunetha ke kuthiwe masingazi esikolweni ngoba sikwazi ukuvula incwadi zezibambanzi imvula.
The norms and standards case is aimed at forcing the Minister of the Department of Basic Education to put in place minimum uniform norms and standards for school infrastructure. And basically what those would be a law, a binding law, which says that each school in the country must be of a certain, at a certain level in terms of its infrastructure. Despite a number of promises by the Minister of Education that she would make this law, she's now refusing to put those norms and standards in place. So this application is aimed at forcing her to do so. In this case, we are acting for an NGO based in Cape Town called Equal Education, as well as the infrastructure crisis committees at 2 schools in the Eastern Cape. Mkanzini Junior Secondary School is near Port St. John's, which was gutted by fire in 2009. Since 2009, the government's done nothing to try and assist them. So it really is an emergency situation. What the school has done is they've sort of salvaged material from the burnt structure, tin sheeting, roofing, and any other materials they can find, and they've sort of cobbled together 5 tin shack classrooms.
We took the materials from the forest. Yes, that the community brought some sticks and nails, and we took the iron which was from the bent block. We cannot keep children there. We have to take them and squeeze in the 2 classrooms that were built also by the community. This is grade R combined with grade 1. We have grade 5 and 6 here. It makes things difficult for learners to learn in those classrooms, because there are times when we have to take out of the classrooms, like when it is very hot. We just have to take them out of the classrooms to under the trees.
When there's prolonged periods of rain, there's a lot of seepage, so some of the classrooms become virtually unusable because they're just full of mud.
Ngoba abakwazi ukuphumelela ukuza esikolweni xa kunethile. Ngokoyikela ukufuma okuphansi kuba kunethile, beza benodaka esikolweni xa bengena ngaphakathi kufuneka kuba nezifo ezifana nepneumonia xa bethe bangena eludakeni. Bezofunda phansi kwemeko ezinjalo, so iyayichaphazela imfundo ngalo hlobo imeko yabo ngohlobo esiyoyikela singabazali.
There's no real perimeter fence around the school, so that means that there's constantly livestock wandering through the schoolyard, and they take shelter in the classrooms when there's rain. So a lot of, every morning a lot of time is spent just sort of trying to clear out the classrooms and make them habitable for the day. Huge problem with a shortage of furniture, desks and chairs.
We don't have chairs because the ones that are here are borrowed from another school.
That's just for seating, and there's really very little for actually writing. And a lot of teachers have expressed, how they avoid giving the children any task where it requires any writing because there's no way for them to write.
Kakhulu kuba imfundo yethu kufumaniseka bezinye izinto kuya kube nzima ukuzibhala, kuye end up sishiya nalexesha ke ngoku kube nzima kakhulu.
Another major problem is drinking water at schools.
We get water from the streams which are too far from the school, meaning that we have to travel about 2 kilometers from the school to the stream, of which even that water is not healthy for the children. Some can get sick because of the water, because the water is not treated.
South African legislation makes it compulsory for parents to send their children to school, and it's a criminal offence not to. But the schools available for children are unsafe and unhygienic, so that really places parents in a real predicament. Do I face criminal prosecution for not sending my child to school, or do I send them to a school where I know that their health and safety are really at risk? And that's aside from the real question of whether this is a breach, these conditions are a breach of their right to basic education.
The students are disadvantaged in this situation because we have the dropouts and we have a high failure rate. Yes, the teachers are doing their job to the best of their abilities, but the condition does not agree with them.
Okay, fossils can be.
Kunzima kakhulu ukutitsha kwimeko enje kuba kaloku yonke into funeka siyibhale ngesandla, asikwazi noba singenza ntoni ezibhodini.
Give the 3 types of rocks. Okay, how many types of rocks?
There are 3 types of rocks.
The other huge problem is a lack of communication. Schools just don't know if they are going to receive any improvements and when. So that puts them in a very difficult position to know whether they should just sit back and let things crumble further, because who knows, the government might pitch up, within the next 6 months or within a year and suddenly build them something, and then what they had put all of their resources and investments into would simply just sort of become redundant, or would, often they're demolished in order to make space for the new classrooms.
Yes, it's difficult for me, but it makes me angry because it is a long time ago that we referred the matter to the Department of Education, but still there's nothing that has happened yet.
That's something that we spend a lot of time trying to do, is get information out of the government in order to give it to the communities.
Esiza amalunga Department of Education athembisile kwisihlandlo sokuqala ukuba angakwazi ukuba angayivusa ibloko, akhomba kwiklasi esinazo apha esikolweni ukuba azozivusa kodwa akakwazanga ukuphumelela. Ziphindile futhi kwaqhutyeleka kwazanye into yokuba kuphandwe into yoba ngaba isizathu sokuba ngaba mabangaphumeleli yintoni na, kodwa kwafumaneka izizathu zivakalayo zibambekayo. Bathe ke abahlali bakubona loo ngxaki, babona okokuba mabacele i-Legal Resources Center ukuba mayibancedise phantsi kokuba kubonakala uba urhulumente kukhona ungananzi kakuhle phantsi kwemeko yoba makwakhiwe isikolo.
A lot of the schools were built by the communities themselves. So they have a real vested interest in seeing that the school is, looked after as best they can.
Bangabantu abadontsa nzima, abasebenzi baye babethe ezo sentanyana zorholo abarholayo ukwazeke ukuba kube khona indlela yoba kungathengwa nezitena kuthengwe namazinyo.
We came up with a plan to talk to the community members in order to form some kind of a crisis committee, and the crisis committee would act on behalf of the school as they are the parents with kids who are attending these schools.
Over the last 3 years, we have visited probably in the region of 60 to 100 schools in the Eastern Cape.
Go to 4 or 5 schools a day, and it was just terrible. Terrible for me too. It was my first time. I experienced something like that.
We've been involved in a number of pieces of litigation where we've tried to improve the infrastructure in schools with a fair amount of success. The Mud Schools case focused on 7 particular schools, and the settlement agreement which was reached with the government resulted in those 7 schools being rebuilt and money being put aside to eradicate all 400 mud structure schools in the province. The way that the norms and standards case came about was by seeing the poor manner in which the government spending its money, and the fact that we were continuously litigating for various schools. It meant that the underlying systemic problem of there being a minimum norm which all schools must meet was sort of not being addressed. And the hope is that if this litigation is successful, it would mean that we would be able to focus our resources on ensuring that all schools get to that minimum level. And it would also be a way to ensure that communities, civil society, the schools, the parents themselves are able to monitor government's progress and be able to see whether they are in fact reaching those standards or the standards that they've set for themselves. Because without a standard, without a binding standard, it's impossible for schools to hold the government accountable. So the benefits of succeeding in this case are big.
We'd like our classrooms to be properly built from the material that is good for our classrooms. Like we must have a school with face bricks, a school with strong iron, a school with the treated timber. That can be very good for us, which means that our school can last very long. It can be a lifetime guarantee.
Into ndiyazithanda ngibona zikhona lapha esikolweni, ngathanda uba sibonazo nathi iikhompyutha, sikwazi ukufunda ikhompyutha apha esikolweni, sibe nazo neento ezisetyenziswa ngumbane ngoba asinazo apha esikolweni.